Saturn, the giant planet known for its breathtaking rings, is about to undergo a stunning transformation. By March 2025, those iconic rings will almost completely vanish from view, making the planet appear strangely bare and unfamiliar. 4 months, Saturn will look like just another gas giant without its famous halo. But this isn't some science fiction twist, it's real and it's happening soon. The reason isn't that the rings are gone forever, but rather that space is playing a clever trick on our eyes. They'll come back eventually, but until then the change is going to be eerie and dramatic. What's really happening here has to do with how Saturn tilts. Just like Earth, Saturn doesn't sit perfectly straight. It leans over as it orbits the Sun. It takes Saturn nearly 30 years to complete one orbit, and during this time the angle of its rings shifts from our point of view here on Earth. Sometimes the rings are angled beautifully, wide and visible, allowing us to admire them in all their glory. But at other times, they're tilted in such a way that we only see the edge of the rings, making them nearly invisible. And that edge is incredibly thin. Believe it or not, Saturn's rings in some places are only about 30 feet thick. That's thinner than a small 2-story building. Now imagine trying to spot something that thin from nearly a billion miles away. It's like holding up a single piece of paper on its edge from across a football field and asking someone to find it. That's what happens when the rings are tilted edge on. From Earth they seem to disappear completely. And that's exactly what we're going to witness in 2025, a rare and incredible cosmic illusion. This fascinating event only happens once every 15 years, when Earth and Saturn align in just the right way. The last time this happened was back in 2009. And after it occurs in 2025, it won't happen again until 2038. These edge-on moments are special because they give us a unique perspective of Saturn without the overwhelming brightness of its rings. On March 23, 2025, Saturn's rings will seem to vanish before our very eyes. They'll remain nearly invisible for several months, slowly tilting back into view as the planet continues its orbit. By late 2025, the rings will start to become visible again, especially if you're using a powerful telescope. And by 2027, Saturn's rings will be fully open and bright once more, giving us another 15 years to enjoy them before they fade from view again. But this isn't just some interesting visual trick. For astronomers, these moments are valuable opportunities to study the planet itself without the glare of the rings blocking the view. They help peel back the curtain and allow scientists to focus on what lies underneath. In fact, some incredible discoveries have happened during these rare ring plane crossings. Astronomers have found new moons, 13 of them to be exact, thanks to these events. Even the planet's faintest and most distant ring, the mysterious E-ring, was first detected during one of these alignment periods back in 1966. It's a reminder that sometimes the best discoveries come when things temporarily disappear. However, this time might not be as exciting for scientists, because Saturn will appear close to the Sun in our sky, making it difficult to study in detail. That's unfortunate, because these ring disappearances are usually a time of excitement and scientific exploration. This time around, due to the glare of the Sun, major discoveries like new moons or hidden rings aren't expected. Still, the event itself remains a stunning example of how space continues to surprise and amaze us. It also serves as a reminder that everything in the universe is in constant motion. Even the most iconic features of our solar system can change right before our eyes. Even though the rings will only disappear temporarily in 2025, it's a reminder of a deeper truth. Nothing in space is truly permanent. One day Saturn's rings might really be gone, not just hidden by perspective but completely erased. Future generations might look through a telescope and see a dull, featureless planet where the majestic rings once danced in the sky. Right now we're incredibly lucky. We get to see Saturn with its full, glowing ring system, something that might not always be the case in the distant future. So when Saturn's rings vanish in 2025, even for a short while, take a moment to reflect. It's a rare chance to witness a cosmic event that shows how fleeting beauty can be, even on a planetary scale. If you've ever gazed at Saturn through a telescope or even seen a picture and been awestruck by its beauty, this disappearance is your reminder that space is alive, moving, and ever-changing. It's not just about science, it's about perspective, wonder, and time itself. Right now, Saturn is located in front of the Aquarius constellation. While it's not the brightest object in the night sky, it still shines with a soft golden glow that makes it easy to spot. If you own a telescope, or even if you know someone who does, this is your chance to view Saturn's rings before they fade from sight. Even a modest telescope can reveal the rings, but that window is closing fast. As time marches forward, the rings will continue to flatten, becoming more and more difficult to see. By September 2024, Saturn will reach opposition, meaning it will stand directly opposite the Sun in the sky. This will make it fully illuminated and perfectly placed for viewing. That's the moment skywatchers should aim for, because after that, the rings will begin to narrow rapidly. By early 2025, the rings will be nothing more than a razor-thin line in the sky. Then, when the edge-on alignment hits in March, the rings will seem to disappear completely. Only patience and time will bring them back into view. The recovery process will be gradual. After March 2025, the rings will slowly start tilting outward again. But don't expect a dramatic reappearance overnight. It will take years for them to fully open up again. Not until 2032 will the rings return to their maximum tilt, once again framing Saturn in that classic breathtaking shape we all recognize. These ring plane crossings, while visually subtle, have had a major impact on how we study the planet. In fact, they've revealed some of the most interesting facts about Saturn over the decades. Saturn's rings are not just beautiful, they're extremely reflective, bouncing sunlight so intensely that they can actually blind telescopes from seeing anything else nearby. But when the rings fade, the glare fades with them. This allows astronomers to spot fainter objects like small moons or distant dust bands that are otherwise hidden. That's how several of Saturn's moons, including Iapetus, Rhea, Dione, and Tethys, were spotted. The last moon discovered during one of these rare alignments was back in 1980. Who knows what could be lurking in the shadows this time? Scientists believe that planetary rings might be a natural phase for many worlds. These rings may form from leftover debris that never managed to clump together into moons, or they might be the remnants of moons that were torn apart by gravity. If Saturn's rings are truly vanishing, it could mean this process is a universal rule, one that all planetary ring systems eventually go through. This concept of cosmic recycling forces scientists to reconsider the entire life cycle of planets. It's not just about how rings form anymore, it's about how they die and what happens in the aftermath. And then there's another twist to this mystery. Were Saturn's rings always this massive and beautiful? Some theories suggest that they might actually be quite young, perhaps only a few 100 million years old. If that's true, then humanity is living in an extremely rare moment of cosmic history. We're lucky enough to witness Saturn at its most majestic, wearing its icy crown. Future civilizations, thousands or even millions of years from now, might only know Saturn as a bare gas giant, without a trace of its former splendor. It's a reminder of how fleeting beauty can be in the universe. Despite the current predictions, the rings still have some time left before they disappear completely. Even if the fastest estimates are correct, we're talking about 300 million years, a time span that dwarfs the entire existence of human civilization. It's a long time by our standards, but in the grand cosmic scale, it's almost nothing. The solar system itself is more than 4 billion years old. That means it's been changing and evolving far before humans existed and will continue doing so long after Saturn's rings have vanished into memory. But here's where things get dramatic. Saturn, the showstopper of the solar system, the planet that made all others look dull in comparison, was suddenly going through a transformation. Its iconic rings, those dazzling loops of ice and rock that had danced around the planet for ages, were now vanishing. And it wasn't happening slowly over eons like scientists originally predicted. It was happening fast. Faster than expected. Suddenly, Saturn didn't look so majestic anymore. It looked bare. And it wasn't just an aesthetic change, it was the beginning of a chain reaction. The rings had always been more than just decoration. They helped stabilize Saturn's moons, acting like a cosmic referee in a very chaotic match. Some moons depended on the rings to keep their orbits steady. Others, like Enceladus, even interacted with the ring particles in active physical ways. Enceladus, in particular, was one of the most fascinating moons in the solar system, shooting geysers of water from its hidden underground ocean. Scientists were hopeful that those plumes might even contain signs of life. But with the E-ring gone, those plumes began to weaken, and the dream of alien life grew dimmer. Without the constant feed of icy particles from the E-ring, Enceladus's once powerful geysers began to sputter. The spectacular jets of water vapor that had been visible from space began to fade. The surface started to lose its shine, becoming darker and less reflective. It wasn't just a visual change, it hinted at something deeper. Whatever might have existed in that hidden ocean, cut off from its energy source, could now face a much harsher, colder fate. In the grand story of space exploration, it was a heartbreaking twist. A world that once teased us with the possibility of life was going silent. Then there's Titan, Saturn's largest and weirdest moon. Titan is a place like no other, covered in thick orange clouds, dotted with lakes of liquid methane, and wrapped in a climate cycle that eerily mirrors Earth's. But even Titan wasn't safe from the consequences of the disappearing rings. The rings had helped stabilize Saturn's gravitational field. Without them, everything began to shift, subtly at first, then more noticeably. Titan's weather began to act up. Its methane lakes started to evaporate at random. The stable rhythm of its seasons broke apart. It was as if the moon's whole personality was changing. These changes didn't happen overnight, but they were creeping in, slow, steady, and irreversible. Over time, the surface of Titan began to show signs of stress. Once predictable weather patterns became chaotic. Clouds formed in strange places. Temperatures fluctuated more wildly than before. Scientists realized that without the ring system maintaining balance, even massive moons like Titan could be thrown off course. It was a stunning reminder that everything in space is connected. The loss of Saturn's rings didn't just affect Saturn, it sent ripples across the entire neighborhood. Further out in the Saturnian system, the smaller moons were having an even harder time. These tiny, irregular moons had always been skating on the edge of stability. Without the gravitational influence of the rings to help guide them, they started to drift. Some lost their delicate orbits entirely. A few were drawn into Saturn's atmosphere, where they were torn apart by crushing pressure. Others were ejected from the planet's gravity, flung into deep space. These once loyal satellites were now wandering aimlessly, lost and homeless in the vastness of the solar system. And Saturn itself was changing too. The rings had once played a subtle but important role in shaping the gas giant's appearance and behavior. They reflected sunlight, affected the distribution of heat in the upper atmosphere, and even influenced the planet's magnetic field. Now, with nothing to scatter the sunlight, Saturn's clouds began to absorb more radiation than ever before. Storms became unpredictable. Bands of clouds shifted in ways scientists had never seen. The planet's familiar look, a creamy globe striped with symmetrical lines, was beginning to unravel. Deep beneath those swirling clouds, even stranger things were unfolding. Scientists had long debated whether the rings could influence Saturn's internal structure. Now, as the planet lost that mass, they finally had their answer. Saturn's internal oscillations, essentially, its natural vibrations, were changing. Pressure zones inside the planet were shifting. Over thousands of years, this could even affect the composition of the planet's interior. The very nature of Saturn was being rewritten, not just on the surface but from the inside out. It was a transformation that no one had seen coming. And it didn't end there. Saturn's magnetosphere, the massive bubble of magnetic energy that shields it from space radiation, had also been influenced by the rings. With them gone, the way Saturn interacted with the solar wind changed dramatically. Spacecraft still orbiting Saturn began to detect strange disturbances. More high-energy particles were slamming into the atmosphere. The planet's electromagnetic environment was growing more chaotic by the day. It was clear now, the disappearance of the rings wasn't a cosmetic event. It was an existential one that touched every part of the Saturnian system. The moons scrambled to adjust to their new environment. The atmosphere, once relatively stable, was now churning with unfamiliar patterns. And Saturn itself? It was turning into something entirely new. The ringed planet of textbooks, of telescopes, and of human imagination was gone. In its place stood a world in flux. Future astronomers might look back on the age of the rings as a brief, golden chapter in the long life of the planet. They were never permanent, just a phase in a much larger story. But what they left behind would shape the future of Saturn for ages. Still, this wasn't just a sad story about change. It was a wake-up call. The loss of the rings marked a full-scale shift in the balance of the Saturnian system. Every element, from tiny grains of ice to massive moons, had to adapt. And it wasn't happening gradually anymore. The process had accelerated. The once gentle rain of ring particles onto Saturn's atmosphere had become a cosmic waterfall. Gravity had been pulling on the rings for billions of years, but now something had changed. The collapse had sped up. The end had arrived far sooner than anyone expected. Telescopes on Earth and probes in Saturn's orbit recorded the event in real time. The rings broke apart into strands, then threads, then dust, until nothing remained. Saturn, once the shining jewel of our solar system, now floated in space looking strangely bare. But the collapse of the rings didn't just affect how the planet looked. Their loss was destabilizing the entire system. Saturn's gravitational field, once buffered by the ring's mass, began to shift in unpredictable ways. Moons that had peacefully orbited for eons now found themselves in peril, pulled into new paths or pushed to the brink. Some of the smaller moons were the first to go. They had always existed at the edge, on the verge of chaos. Without the rings to give them gentle gravitational nudges, they lost their delicate balance. A few spiraled downward, dragged into Saturn's thick clouds where they disintegrated violently. Their remains joined the swirling debris storm now building around the planet. Others were thrown outward, beyond Saturn's influence, into the dark cold of interplanetary space. These objects, once bound to a majestic system, were now cosmic refugees with no clear destination. Even Saturn's bigger moons weren't entirely safe. The planet's shifting gravity worked like invisible hands, gently but relentlessly rearranging everything. Titan and Enceladus, massive as they were, started moving differently. Their orbits wobbled. Their internal dynamics began to shift. On Titan, the already slow seasons became even more erratic. The lakes of methane began to behave strangely, evaporating in one hemisphere while suddenly pooling in another. What once seemed like a stable, Earth-like world now felt unfamiliar, unpredictable. And in the skies above, the weather changed as well, clouds forming in strange shapes, storms brewing in new places. Beneath Saturn's thick atmosphere, the transformation continued. Without the rings scattering light and influencing heat patterns, the upper layers of the gas giant were absorbing more solar radiation than ever before. This caused temperature fluctuations and sparked storms far larger than anything seen before. Massive cloud systems formed at unusual latitudes, and the planet's iconic symmetry gave way to chaos. Scientists who once thought they understood Saturn's weather now realized they were only scratching the surface. The disappearance of the rings had triggered a planetary identity crisis, and the consequences were still unfolding. Could Saturn's ringless future bring even bigger surprises than we expect? Could this gas giant evolve into something no one predicted? The signs suggest we've only begun to understand what's happening. What are your thoughts? Could the loss of these rings reshape the future of Saturn and its moons in ways we haven't even imagined yet? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible space stories.